Hello again, everyone. This is Zombie Kids Rule, and I'm back with another a tutorial. It'll be several tutorials. I'm not sure exactly how many, but I decided I finally went back to try to do the tutorials for my Sudoku puzzle. And so I posted quite a while ago. I posted a couple demos of I can't even say it, a Sudoku game that I was making in MZ just to see if I could. And I learned a lot from it. It took a long time. It really did. It took a long time. But I have three demos up. I have one first initial demo, then I have a demo of adding some features to it, and then I have another demo where I started converting it to icons, and so using icons in the puzzle instead of numbers. I have not finished that icon one yet. I haven't gone back and finished that. Um, I did add some additional features that are not in the previous demo. The most recent one where I added a timer, I added a score function, and I added a bonus or penalty feature. And so I also fixed some things. So I'm just going to say candidly, I worked on this a long time ago. Didn't sit down to do a tutorial. Went back recently, and it took me hours to remember exactly how I built this and how it works so that I could explain it. I mean, it took me hours to go through this. And then when I started play testing it again to because I try to very thoroughly play test everything, I started discovering, hey, you didn't finish stuff with the new features like the score and the counter, the timer. It's not doing what it should be doing. And so I've been basically updating this and fixing bugs since yesterday morning. And I think I finally have it all done. I just finished I think I caught the last, bug that I could find, finished it, and now I'm going to try to do these tutorials. So again, there'll be at least two, maybe three, breaking down how I made this. There's only I think two plugins that I'm using that are default. They're default with MZ. It's the text picture plugin and the button picture plugin. I think I've highlighted these before. So there's only two default plugins that I'm doing with this. Um, I'm essentially using 186 switches. I'm using 110 variables, and I'm using 83 common events. And I'm using almost all of the pictures that you're allowed to use and show on the screen without some plugin to modify that. So I think you can have 99 pictures on a screen at a time, and then I don't think you can go above that. I'd have to confirm, but I think that's true. 99 pictures without some other plugin to modify that. So there's a lot to this. It's a lot of it is just copying and pasting. So and paying attention to copy and paste and then change values, change switch names, change variable numbers, that sort of thing. So it is a lot of busy work. It's a lot of attention to detail. Once I kind of figured out how it was supposed to flow. I'm not going to do a play test again simply because there's well, maybe I'll do a quick one just to show the timer, score, and countdown because that's just really quick and easy. And then I'll jump in and show you again from the start how this is evented. There are 7 events that run this. A lot of them are running in parallel. At certain times. So let me just play test this really quickly just to show the last couple features that I added. So I'm just going to go ahead and click here, and then you get to choose your puzzles, either easy, medium, or hard, or you can choose your own hints. I'm just going to go ahead and do easy because it's the fastest one. It's going to go through how to play the game, and then right off the bat, once I finish this, it's going to start a timer, it's going to show me a score, and it's going to show a possible bonus. So if I finish this puzzle while there's still time, then the bonus that's left is going to be added to my score. And then, if I play another game, the score stays whatever it is, and then it would happen again. If there's any time left on your timer, it's tracked as a bonus, so it starts at 600, and every second those goes by, it takes away a point. And so if I finish the puzzle, then it gets added to my score. If the timer runs out, then basically this becomes a penalty and it subtracts from your score. So that's, again, I haven't really flushed that out. I just added that as a, hey, this should also be included, and I messed around with it and I bug fixed it, and it works now. I also changed a couple things in another part that I had to figure out. I can reset the game. It redoes everything. Your score doesn't change, but the timer goes away, the thing goes away. And if I do this again, the other thing I changed was um, when I do my hints thing in my previous demo, when you started doing your hints, it immediately had the solve puzzle option down here, the question mark, and it was active. So it let you try to solve the puzzle before you picked any hints. And the problem with that is, and I'll show you when I talk about this, right now, behind the scenes, all of these boxes have numbers assigned to them. There are 81 variables that are being used because there's 81 boxes, right? 9 times 9, so there's 81 boxes. Right now, with choose your own hints, they all have the numerical value they're supposed to have to solve the puzzle. And so if the solve puzzle option was activated, if you were sitting on this screen and you pick solve puzzle, it would say congratulations, you did it. And it's like, no, you're not supposed to do that. So that was one of the bugs I had to fix, to make it so that this little solve puzzle down here that shows up doesn't activate until you have finished choosing all your hints. And then the other thing I had a problem with is making it so that the timer doesn't start until you completely are ready to start the puzzle, where you're all ready to go, and then the timer starts. So that was another bug I had to figure out. All right, so let me jump right into this to show you how this is working. So first, I'm just going to show the setup of the switches. So again, I had to use 186 switches for this. And so I started, and I tried to name them something that made sense. And let me just go back here to explain something. So on this puzzle, um, these there are rows, there are columns, and then there are groups here. And I'm using those as part of the puzzle solving process. But I also, in building this, using rows and columns and groups, the other thing I did as I was building this, I first had to make sure that I had the pixels right to get the white boxes where they're supposed to be and the numbers where they're supposed to be. And that just took a bunch of trial and error because MZ had not added the feature yet about previewing where pictures are going to show up on the screen. And so I have no idea how this would have worked if that function had been added, because I haven't gone down and back and tried to do it. So at the time, I would just have to do the show picture, select the pixels, test it to see if it showed up where I wanted it to be, and then go back and tweak it. So the other thing that's important to know is that I did these by grouping. So when you look at the names of my switches and the names of my variables, they're basically using S for Sudoku, and then 1-1 is the first group, first square. So this would be S1-1, S1-2, S1-3, S1-4, and up to S1-9. And then this would be 2-1, 2-2, 2-3. Okay, so that's just how I started doing it. So I want to explain that really quickly first. If you wanted to recreate this, then you do your own naming. So going back here, here's my control switches. So I started with Sudoku 1-1, and of course I could have made this shorter S1-1, but I just whatever. So I had to do this all the way from 1-1 to 9-9. So here's the first batch, and they're all essentially the same. Okay, they're all the switches. Then, in order to do my solution to solving the puzzle, I have switches for all the columns. So Sudoku column 1 right, meaning it's right and not wrong. Sudoku column 2 right, 3 right, 4 right, 5 right. So the columns, there's 9 columns, and I have a switch to say, is that column right? Okay, and basically the way you determine that it's right is that it adds up to the correct value, right? So each column should only have the numbers 1 through 9 in it. Each row should only have the values 1 through 9, and then they can't repeat. And each group, each 9 by 9, or I'm sorry, 3 by 3 group of tiles should only have the numbers 1 through 9 in it without repeating. So if you add those numbers up, 1 through 9, you get a value, right? And so it's checking here, is the value of column 1 correct? Is the value of column 2 correct? And then the same thing with the rows. And then the same thing with the groups. By doing it this way, by checking the value, adding up the value of all the columns, all the rows, and all the groups, it pretty much eliminates the possibility that you could duplicate values where you're not supposed to and have it come out being a still correct solution. So, there's probably an easier way to do this. There's probably a better way to do it, but hey, it's just the way I figured it out. And then I have switches for if there's a puzzle error. Then I have switches for puzzle 1, puzzle 2, puzzle 3, because you get to choose whether you're going to do puzzle 1, puzzle 2, puzzle 3. And then I have a switch for puzzle solved. I also have switches for S1-1 hint, S1-2 hint, meaning that if you choose your own hints, then I had to have switches for every single square of the puzzle. So I had to have 81 switches to identify which of the squares in the Sudoku puzzle have been selected by the player as a hint. So I was using switches to do that. So here are all those switches, all the way up. And then I have Sudoku hint selection. That is a switch that's basically saying, hey, the player is going to choose their own hints. All right, so that's how I set up all of my switches. Then all of my variables, again, I tried to group them together, but there's 110 variables, and they start at 600 just because this particular project has a lot of stuff in it. And so I named my variables Sudoku 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, and the first 81 of those is to store the numerical value of the tile, the square in the Sudoku puzzle, right? Because each tile has to have a value. And so these variables are storing the value. They're storing the value of the hints. They're storing the value that the player inputs. So that's the first 81 variables, all the way up through Sudoku 9-9. Then I have the variable for Sudoku column 1 through 9, row 1 through 9, and group 1 through 9. Why? Because when I'm adding up, right, when I'm adding up the total of the values in each column, each row, each group, it's being stored in a variable. So I can check to make sure it's the right value. So that's those variables. Then I have a variable for a Sudoku column error. Basically, that's saying how many errors are there in the columns. Sudoku row error, Sudoku group error. So how many errors are there in the columns, the rows, or the group? And then there's a total error. What is the total errors in the puzzle? Then there's because you can choose hints, there's a variable for Sudoku hints total. So how many hints in total did you pick? How many have you chosen? Sudoku hints chosen, and then Sudoku hints remaining. So you can display on the screen how many hints the player has left. There's a variable for the Sudoku score. There's a variable for the Sudoku timer counter, and there's a variable for the Sudoku penalty counter. Those are the ones where at the bottom of the screen it was counting down to determine how much of a bonus or a penalty you might get. And then this is icon select. That's actually, I think that might be for the other puzzle, the icon version of it. So those are all the variables, again, looped together or grouped together. And honestly, folks, what I should have done was I should have made this puzzle in its own project, because then all the variables and all the puzzle, all the switches could have been at the very beginning, right? All my variables could have started at, say, 21. All my switches could have started, at 21 or whatever. So that's, if I had to do this all over again, I would have made this in its own project. Okay, but I didn't. I started making it in an existing project where I'm doing a lot of my experiments. The other thing I wanted to show is the common events. So here we have a total of 83 common events. And the common events, the first 81 common events, are all about allowing the player to input a number into the puzzle for each of the squares. So each square has a common event attached to it. And if the square is not a hint, right? So if it's a hint, the player can't change it. If the square is not a hint, then there's a common event, and there's a plugin that's saying, hey, if the player clicks on this square, call a common event, and I'm going to let the player input a number. Okay, so that's the first 81 of these common events. You have to have one for each square, each tile of the puzzle. They are all the same. So what I mean is they're all structured the same, and they just have to be updated with the necessary changes to, say, for instance, the switch or the variable number. And the picture number and the pixels. Okay, so that's the first 81. Then this is the icon puzzle, so we're going to skip over that. And then there's two more common events. One is Sudoku puzzle reset. So if on the screen there's a reset button, and if the player clicks on that, it calls this common event to do the work, to reset everything. And then there's the Sudoku solve puzzle. So there's the little icon at the bottom right of the screen. It's a question mark, and then if the player clicks on that, it does the work of checking, are there any errors? Did you solve it correctly? If there are errors, it'll show you. If there's not errors, it'll say, hey, you solved it, blah blah blah. So there's essentially 83 common events. So let me show first these common events, and I'll explain what they're doing, because they're pretty short. They're pretty short, and this just requires you to copy and paste, and then change certain things, and just have a very, very, very good attention to detail. Okay, so as I said, these common events are used, one for every square of the puzzle, to allow the player to input a number. But it also has to be built but what if that square is a hint? What if that square has already been identified as a hint? I can't let the player change that. So What this common event is doing is the very first thing it does, it has a conditional branch right here. And it says, and you notice there's no trigger because this is being called, the common event is being called by the player clicking on the map or on the screen. So, um, so first thing, it does a conditional branch check. If Sudoku hint selection is on, that means it's a switch. Okay, so when the player chooses to select their own hints, that turns on a switch, Sudoku hint selection. So when the player says, "Hey, I want to choose my own hints," it turns this switch on. If that switch is on, then what it's going to do is for Sudoku 1-1, remember this is linked to a specific square in the puzzle. It's going to turn on a switch. So this particular switch is S1-1 hint, meaning Sudoku, the first group, the first 9 tiles in a group, the first tile of that group. That's the way I named it. It's turning that switch on. Because again, if this is on, when the player clicks on the square, they are wanting to reveal what that number is. And then it becomes a hint. It officially becomes the hint. So the player is presented with a Sudoku puzzle with all white squares because they said I want to choose my own. I want to choose my own hints. So they have 81 white squares. They click on the very first square in the puzzle. It calls this common event. It immediately checks if Sudoku hint selection is on, because they're choosing their own hints. Then I'm going to designate this square, square 1-1, as a hint. So I'm turning on the switch that says this is a hint. And then therefore you're not going to be able to change it. Okay, and that's in a different event. A different event is going to use this to determine whether the player can actually click on it again. The other thing it's doing is it's using this variable Sudoku hints chosen. It's adding 1 to it because we have to track how many hints the player has selected, right? Because in the game, I showed you really quickly. I think I showed you quickly, or at least in another demo. They can choose from 14 hints up to 28, and there's different breakdowns of how many hints they can select. And I should have said this earlier in the video. I highly encourage you, if you didn't watch the demos before, I would go back and watch the Sudoku demo that basically shows how the game works, how the selection works, how the choose your own hints works. Okay, so here the very first thing it's doing is and don't worry folks, I'm not going to explain this 81 times. I'm going to explain it once, and then I'm going to show you how to just change it 80 more times. So first thing it does, again, player clicked on a white square because they're choosing their own hints. This switches on. That tells this common event, hey, that square that the player just clicked on and brought me to this common event, that's supposed to be a hint. So I'm going to turn the switch for that square on that says it's a hint. And I'm going to add 1 to this variable Sudoku hints chosen so that we can check again to say, hey, do you have any hints left? And then it's going to exit the event processing because they picked their hint, and now it's going to exit. Now, once they're in the puzzle, all the hints are done. Either they didn't choose select my own hints, or they picked all their hints. Well, this hint selection is off in those 2 instances. If I start a game and I don't want to pick my own hints, I pick puzzle 1, puzzle 2, or puzzle 3, this never gets turned on, which means when I click on a square that's white and it brings me to, for instance, this common event, it's going to skip right over this because the Sudoku hint selection switch is not on. So it's going to skip right over it. and it's going to do what it normally does. This is the normal functionality right here of these common events, allowing the player to input a value. So, very first thing it does is use the input number command. So, if I'm here and on event commands, page 1, input numbers, and when I select this, basically you have to pick a variable, right? You have to pick a variable for it to store it in. And then you pick the number of digits, right? How many digits can you have, right? How many digits of a number can you enter? Well, we're doing a Sudoku puzzle, so we only want them to be able to choose from 0 to 9, right? So it's a one digit entry, okay? And so we're using the input number command. This is the variable I'm storing it in, Sudoku 1-1, because that's the variable that's going to be used to display the number in the puzzle, and it's one digit. That allows the player to enter the value they want from 0 to 9. Then it's going to take this switch, Sudoku puzzle error, and it's going to turn it off. Now, this comes later. When the player decides to check the solution, and if there's errors, it displays the errors. And and then there's the little icon at the bottom. So normally in the screen, it has a little question mark. That allows you to click on that to solve the puzzle. If there's errors, it changes that icon to a red X, and it's not clickable anymore. So you technically you couldn't solve the puzzle after that. And then if you do solve it correctly, it turns into a green check mark. What this is doing is once the player makes any change to the puzzle, any square of the puzzle that they're able to click on and change, once they change that, it will turn that switch off. So, and by turning that switch off, and you'll see this in another event, when you turn that switch off, it's going to turn that puzzle solution icon back to a question mark, which makes it clickable again. So that's all this is doing. Okay, some of this stuff I added as I built it because, first I just built the input a number. And then I was like, oh wait, what if they're selecting hints? I have to add this part. Oh wait, if they're solving the puzzle, I have to add this part. So I I kept adding things to it. The benefit here is this works now. So in theory, if you wanted to recreate this, you can just recreate it the way it is, and you wouldn't have to add anything. You wouldn't have to change anything unless you decided you were going to change the functionality in some way. Okay, so that's what this is doing. When you go to solve the puzzle, it turns on a switch if there's an error. That switch needs to get turned off so that another event can reactivate that ability to solve the puzzle. So then what is this doing? Well, we're using a plugin, TextPicture, and it's basically taking the variable 601, which is what this is. Sudoku 1-1 is variable 601, and it's going to take that value, whatever the player input, it's going to take that value and it's going to display it on the screen. So it's going to make it appear in the puzzle. So again, when we edit here, this is plugin command, and you have to select your plugin. I only have two in this project, ButtonPicture and TextPicture. Tells you basically what it's doing. You have to usually pick a command, but there's only one for this plugin. This explains what it's doing again. So sets text to display as a picture. After this, so the next line in your event, execute show picture without specifying an image because the text is going to be the image. And then down here, you have to actually, I double clicked it to put whatever you want for text. I have highlighted this in previous tutorials. So all I want to do in this instance, I just want to see the number that the player input. So /v and then in brackets, the number of the variable, 601. That will take the value that the player input here, and it will show it on the screen in the appropriate square. Now, how does it do that? Well, you're using the show picture. So show picture command, You have to use a picture number. You cannot reuse picture numbers unless, if I'm what I did was I designated picture 1 as the first square of the puzzle. Okay? And so picture 1 will always, for me, be the first square of the puzzle, whether that's a white box, or whether that's a purple number because it's a hint, or whether it's a regular number because it's a player inputted number. Doesn't matter. It's picture 1. Okay? The image is blank because that's what the plugin calls for. And then you have to figure out what it's supposed to look like. Now, for my purposes, this I again I had to figure out what was the best scale of the number for the text. Where did I want the start of the picture, the text picture to show, upper left versus center, and then direct designation of the pixels, X and Y. And what I'll just tell you is that what I did first was I took my puzzle and then I figured out where all the pixels were for the white squares, for every single one, all 81 of them, and then what were the right pixels to make the numbers show up in the middle of the squares. I did that first before I started programming any of this, select the numbers and, do this and do that, choose your hints. First thing I did was I made the puzzle, made the puzzle the way it looks, and then I went back and I first said, okay, where does each one of my white boxes need to go to line up correctly? And where are my pixels that I need for the numbers to appear correctly? That was the first thing I did. And then after that, I just essentially copied and pasted the appropriate values to make sure that every time the events were putting something on the screen, whether it be a white box or a number in the square, it was doing it in the right spot. And this is an area. This is where you can make a lot of mistakes if you're not paying really close attention. Again, had to check out the scale, what was most appropriate to make the number the size I wanted it to be. You can mess around with opacity if you want to, blend, whatever. But this is just something that you have to figure out. Okay? So that's how we're doing it. That's how we're displaying that value on the screen. Then what it has to do is for another event, right? So the event that's actually running the player, letting the player play the game, is it does a conditional branch check with an else. If Sudoku 1-1, meaning the variable, if the value of the variable is not equal to 0, okay, if it's not equal to 0, meaning it's a 1 through 9, then we're going to turn on the switch. Sudoku 1-1 is on. We're turning a switch on. Okay? Else, meaning that this is a 0, then we're turning that switch off. Now what is that actually doing? Well, here's the simple explanation. In another event that is running in parallel to make the game work, to let the player play, if the variable if the variable for that square has a value of 0, then that tells that event to show a white box on the screen, to show a white square. If the value is, so that's what that is doing. What this is doing is it's basically saying, hey, if this is not 0, so if it has a value of 1 through 9, I don't want to show a white box. I want to show that value that the player selected. Okay? And so that's where these switches come in. Each square in my puzzle has a switch. If it's on, then that means that it should be displaying a number. If it's off, it means it should be showing a white square. Okay? That's what this part is doing. So conditional branch with the else. Okay? There we go. variable if it's not equal to 0. That's basically how it works. Okay, so I'm just going to run through this really quickly again, because I know that this is this is maybe hard to understand without seeing all the rest of the parallel events that are running. So 81 common events, one for each square of the puzzle. When the player clicks on a square, it goes to the appropriate common event. The first thing it checks is the player choosing their hints. So, is Sudoku hint selection switch on? If it's on, that means they're picking their hints. And that means if they clicked on this 1-1 square, the first square of the puzzle, then I'm going to make that a hint. I'm going to turn the hint switch on. Okay? And I'm going to add 1 to my variable that's tracking how many hints the player has selected. And then I'm going to exit the event so that the player can pick another square, right? They can pick another hint. If this is off, meaning the player picked all their hints or the player never wanted to pick their hints in the first place, then it does the regular stuff. Let the player input a number, save it in a variable, and it's 1 digit, so the player can pick from 0 to 9. Then, as I explained, if the player tried to solve the puzzle already, that turns on a switch. And we want to turn that switch off. If the player never selected the solve puzzle thing, this doesn't matter, because if the switch is already off, it's turning it off isn't going to do anything. So this is there just in case they clicked on the solve puzzle. Okay, so this doesn't hurt anything. If the switch is already off, turning it off again doesn't hurt anything. Then it shows, then it uses the plugin command, right? TextPicture, and this is the variable. Sudoku 1-1 is variable 601. And then the plugin requires that you show picture, give it a number, and don't give it an image because the text is going to be the image. And you got to tell it exactly where to go on the screen so that it looks right. Then it does its conditional branch check. If the variable 1-1 is not equal to 0, then that means there should be a number displayed. I'm going to turn on this switch. Sudoku 1-1 is on, meaning another event knows that it has to display a number. If else, meaning it's not a 0, it's a 1 through 9, then that switch is going to be off, and that means in another event, that square is going to be a white box. Okay? That's all this common event is doing. Each one of them is identically constructed. You just have to change the values. So when I go to the next one, this is the second square in the puzzle. This is the same. Okay, yeah, I got to change this because the switch changes. This stays the same. This stays the same. Yeah, I got to update this because I got to change the variable. Okay, this stays the same because I'm turning that switch off. This, I have to update the variable number. This, I have to update the picture number. And then I got to make sure I update the pixels. Where does it go on the screen? This doesn't change, this doesn't change, but the variable pixels, I'm sorry, where I want the picture to show up, that will change. This has to be updated with the correct variable. This has to be updated with the correct switch. And this has to be updated with the correct switch. So it's as simple as clicking on it, editing it, and then just making a different selection. That's it. So it's not hard to do this. So you make this one, copy and paste it, change the name, right? Because once you copy and paste it, it's going to have the same name. Change the name, change this switch, change this variable, change this variable, change the picture number, change the pixels, change this variable, change this switch, and you're done. It is a bunch of busy work. It's a bunch of copying and pasting. So you do that essentially 81 times. Okay, so that means like if I was recreating this now, if I moved this into another project, if I was recreating this now, you know, I would end up uh, making all of my variables, right? Because you can make a variable when you go into here and do control variables, and I select one, I can just go down here, randomly go here, and then I can make a bunch of variables. Hello, click on this one, bye, click on this one, uh, good luck, right? And I can make as many variables as I want, and when I click apply, those variables are saved in there. And then I can just cancel. And once I apply it, I can cancel it, and those variables are there waiting for me to use. Okay, I'm just making the variables. Okay, so that's and you can do the same thing with switches, right? So when I go to control switches, I go here, just randomly go to here. I can go down here, name a switch, go here, name a switch, go here, name a switch. And then once I do that, right, once I enter something, it makes this available. I click apply, it saves all the switches, right? And then I can just cancel out of it. Those switches are still there. Okay, I don't have to actually set up a switch to do it. So that would be the first thing I would do, right? I would basically go in, make all my variables that I thought I needed, make all my switches that I thought I needed, and then of course here we're making the common events. Okay, so 81 common events, and you're ready to go there. Okay, now let's see. Oh yes, and this is what I wanted to show you too. So this was very simple. This is mapping, right? And all I did was these things right here are just a tile on here. I think I used this one right here for those. So it worked out wonderful that these were just, I put these in like a Sudoku puzzle. So this is just this. I started with a background like this, put these for the puzzles, and then put this little area over here where the player in theory can walk. And then the reason I put these columns here and the little squares is because I realized that I didn't make it where the player couldn't walk all over this puzzle. And I didn't want to try to figure out how to change that, right? Because I'm not great at mapping. So instead, I just put these columns here and these squares. So now when the player's walking around, they can't walk over here. They can't walk on the puzzle, right? That's the only reason I did that. But basically, to make the puzzle, make your background, and then you can use these or any of these squares, and then that way, these are not pictures, right? The pictures are going on top of these. The white boxes are going on top of these, and the numbers are going inside of them. Okay, so anyway, I wanted to highlight that. Okay, so that's the first part. All the variables, all the switches, and then the first 81 of those common events that need to be made. So how does the game start? Well, the game starts by clicking on this, which is the puzzle switch. So I'm gonna actually, I think, show this, and then maybe I'll stop and I'll go to another video. Okay, so let's see how puzzle switch is working. So first thing, I have my image of a switch, right? And honestly, folks, this is what I did. I went here, and I'm sorry, no, I didn't. I was here. I right clicked. Quick event creation, switch. And then let's just leave it talk to monster. It's fine for now. When I do this, now I have my event. It gives me my animation already. It gives me my sound effects. It gives me my animation. And then it basically turns on the switch that's designated. And then when I go to page 2, right, it's going to, because it's turning this on, it then advances to page 2 because the condition for page 2 is now met. And when you click on it again, action button, it does the opposite animation. So it plays the sound effects and it does the animation, to make the switch flip backwards. So see the switch is here to begin with, and it turns the switch off, which puts it back to this page. So so you can see, right, the switch is here in this position. When you click on the event, action button, when you click on the event, it plays the animation, I'm sorry, it plays the sound effect, it does the animation of the switch, boop, moves it over, turns this on, which advances the page to here, and it's sitting there. And then when you click on it again, action button, it plays the animation. I'm sorry, it plays the sound effect, does the animation, and then it turns the switch off. So it goes back here and it boop sits there. Okay, so I did that because, quite frankly, I forget how to do this myself. I have to mess around with it. Same thing with doors, right? So I do quick door creation or chest. I do quick chest creation to get the animation that sheet, and then I modify it. So anyway, um, that's the first thing. There we go. So that's how I started this. Okay, that's how I started this. How I got this. But basically, it's my image. It's direction fix. So that's one of the reasons why you're turning direction fix off. Is initially it's direction fix. Same as characters. So you bump into it when you walk. Right, you can't walk through it. And then action button means you have to click on it to activate it. When you click on it, it plays the sound effects for switch, and then it sets the movement route of this event. Again, I would just do the cheat way of doing this, but this is how it's doing it. Set movement route. You have a choice of either the player, this event, or any of the events uh, uh, on the map. And then you have to tell it what to do, right? So in this instance, it's turning direction fix off so that it can actually go through its animations. Then it's doing turn left, wait 3 frames, turn right, wait 3 frames, and then it's wait for completion. So it just does it, and then it's done. Again, I would just do the quick event creation and have it already there for me. But that's technically what it's doing. So now I have a label, choose again. Why? Because at some point, we're going to ask the player, do you want to try again or something? And we have to go back to the start of this event. No, this is an action button. So first thing it does, so label, again, I can't remember if I show this all the time, but label is on the first page, right? You just click label, give it a name, right? And you have to be consistent. However you put the label in, when you use jump to label, you got to spell it exactly the same way. Okay, so put a label here. Then show text. Which puzzle would you like to try? So that's just a show text command. Then it's the show choices command. And there's a whole bunch of choices here. Okay, because I'm letting them choose a whole bunch of things. So show choices. I'm letting them pick puzzle 1, which is easy, puzzle 2, which is medium, puzzle 3, which is hard, and then choose my own hints. So this is where they get to actually have another set of choices of how many hints they want to do. And then never mind, meaning, you know what, back up, I don't want to do this. So there's my choices. My background is a window. I'm just putting it to the right. My default choice is choice 1 as an easy puzzle. My cancel is choice 5, meaning never mind. So if they push the escape button to cancel, it will default to never mind. Okay. And then, of course, with your show choices, it puts all of these options as when option 1, when option 2, right? So when puzzle 1, easy, is picked, it's going to turn a switch on. Sudoku puzzle 1 is on because the event has to know that the player picked puzzle 1. So it's turning on a switch for puzzle 1. Then it's showing a text. Puzzle 1 is now active. So it's just, giving feedback to the player. Then what this is doing, I've highlighted this in other thingies. So set movement route of the player. They're going to turn left. Okay, and basically they're just going to turn. Okay, they're just turning, I guess, to look at the puzzle. Then these two things. Okay, I've explained this before in other tutorials, but let me explain this again. This is a script that allows you to turn a self switch on events on. And you can turn, using this script, you can turn the self switch of any event in your game on. Because what you're doing is you are choosing the map, you are choosing the event, and you are choosing the switch, the self switch. And then true means you're turning it on, and false means you're turning it off. So this is the script: $game self switches dot set value. Make sure you pay attention to the capitalization. Then there's an open parentheses. Then there's an open bracket. 30 is the map, so I can see that down here. I'm on map 30. 1 is the event, so this is going to turn on a self switch in this event, puzzle setup. And it's going to turn on self switch A. So it's going to make self switch A, because it turns self switch A on, which means the page that has self switch A as a condition is going to become active. And true means it's turning it on. That is the script. And to find that, as I've highlighted before, event commands, page 3, script. Okay? Now, in theory, I could have put both of these in the same script. I could have done that. I didn't, because sometimes as I'm building these, I realize that I put things in the wrong place and I have to copy or cut and paste them and put them other places. So sometimes I put them all in one script, sometimes I leave them as separate command lines. So this one is doing the same thing, except it's turning on self switch A on event 2. So solve puzzle. It's activating that event. Okay? That's the script. And then this is puzzle, if you select puzzle 1. Well, guess what? If you select puzzle 2, it's going to do almost exactly the same thing. If you look down here, when puzzle 2 medium is selected, this is the same except that it's a different switch. So you can copy and paste this into the next section. Update this. Change the switch to Sudoku Puzzle 2. Turn that on. This stays the same. This stays the same. This and this stays the same. You're still going to turn these self switches on for those two events. Guess what? When you pick puzzle 3 hard, exact same thing. You can copy and paste this section. You have to update this to a different switch, Sudoku Puzzle 3. This is the same, this is the same, this is the same, this is the same. So simple copy and paste. Cool, yay, not too hard. Just got to make sure you're turning on those, you're activating these other 2 events is what you're doing. Now, when choose my own hints, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to skip over this for now. I'll come back to this because that's going to be a different video, I'll do another part to this. So we'll cover choose my own hints in another video. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down past the choose my own hints. And I will just say, I added, right? I added that afterwards. I built the 3 puzzles first. You know, puzzle 1, puzzle 2, puzzle 3. And actually, I built them one at a time. I did puzzle 1, then I did puzzle 2, then I added puzzle 3, and I just kept adding to it. So, you know, this evolved over time. So when never mind, then this right here is essentially, it is basically resetting the switch to make it so that it's in this position again. That's what it's doing. And then it's exiting the event. So this right here, let's just look. Direction fix off, turn right, turn left, should be the same as this. Direction fix off, turn right, turn left. It is. So basically, I copied and pasted from here and put it here. So if you say, hey, you know what, I changed my mind, the switch is going to go back to this position. And then you exit the event processing because I was like, hey, I changed my mind. I don't want to do this. What this is doing is if you pick any of these other options and it doesn't exit the event, right, it will eventually get down to here. And what is it doing? It's going to use that same script to turn on a self switch in event 5. So this is event 5. So map 30, event 5, self switch A is being turned on, true. That's over here. That's what's putting the thing on the screen that has the reset option. So it's going to activate this event to start running. And then it's going to turn on self switch A of this event. Why? Because it's going to move it to this page, right? So by turning on self switch A, this page, page 2, becomes the highest page where the conditions are met. And it basically is waiting, action button, for you to click on this to reset the event, right, to reset. So it does the it does the sound effect, the animation, and then it actually gives you text. The switch is reset. You may use it to select another puzzle. So this would allow you to essentially, start over again. Okay. Now, what is all this doing? You can see that this is doing that self-switch script for 3 different things in one command. This was 2. This one's 4. 2, 2, 4. Now, could I have put them all into one? Yes, I could have. But instead, I grouped it by event. Because again, sometimes I need to add, sometimes I figure out, oh, you know what, that's wrong, I need to take away. It was all part of my bug fixing. So what this is doing is, first thing it does is on event 2, right, over here, solve puzzle, it turns off all of the switches, all of the self switches, C, B, A. So if any of those switches were turned on, at any point in time, then they all get turned off as if it was a fresh start. Same thing with event 1. There's 2 switches in event 1, puzzle setup. It's going to turn them both off, B and A. Same thing with 4. So player chooses hints. There's 4 different switches, D, C, B, A. It turns them all off. Same thing with 5. There's 2 switches, so it turns off B and A. 7 for score and penalty. It turns off those both of those, B and A. And then 6 for timer control. It turns off all the switches, D, C, B, A. Some of these might not even be on. It depends on when this happens. Doesn't matter. If a switch is already off, doing the script to turn it off doesn't do anything. It doesn't hurt anything. So I'm just making sure all the switches are turned off. So it's like the beginning of the game. And then it turns itself off. Because remember, this is self switch A. It turns that off so it goes back to this page waiting for the player to click on it to start the game again. Okay, that's the initial event that kicks all of this off. Okay, and yes, I skipped over the choose your own hints for now. Okay, I'll show you a couple other things and then I'll end this video and then pick it up from basically here. So these things over here that are getting turned on. First one, puzzle setup. I'll highlight this again later. This is a parallel event, but page 1 is a parallel event, but it's not going to run because it has a self switch. This is why when we activate that self switch through a script, this event immediately starts to run in parallel, and it does all the stuff it needs to do. Okay? Same thing with this, solve puzzle. It's also a parallel event, but it has a condition. So it doesn't do anything until until that script turns this self switch A on. And then this starts to run in parallel. Okay? Anyway, so I'm going to stop there. So what I did in this video was I showed you all of the switches. There's 186. I showed you all the variables. There's 110. I showed you all the common events. There's 83. Um, I showed you 81 of the common events that are used to allow the player to click on one of these squares. So this is S1-1, S1-2, 1-3, S1-4, right? So it goes this way. So boop, boop, boop. And then this is 2-1, 2-2, 2-3, etc., etc. Described how there's rows, columns, and groups, and then went through this puzzle switch of actually this just allows you as the play allows the player to either pick the pre-built puzzle 1, pre-built puzzle 2, pre-built puzzle 3, or it allows them to choose their own hints. Okay, and then if they choose their own hints, they get there's a bunch that they get to choose from. Let's see, how many do they get to choose from? 28 hints, 25 hints, 21 hints, 17 hints, 14 hints. So it lets them choose any of those. Okay, and then showed the basically the remaining functionality of this, where when you choose a puzzle, it's going to say, okay, which puzzle got turned on. So I'm going to activate a switch, and I have to remotely, using a script, turn on some self switches for a couple of events to get them running, to get them running in parallel, right? So they can start doing stuff. All right. Okay. So I'm going to stop there. That is video one. Again, I hope you find this interesting. I will say again, this took a very, very long time to make. I started off with a question of, could I build this? How would I do it? And then once I got to a point where I was like, yeah, you know what, I could do this. After that, it was just busy work. It was just doing all the repetitive copying and pasting and changing values to make sure that it fully functions the way it is. The cool thing about this is that I would never have expected to be able to see a Sudoku game in RPG Maker, right? Why would I even think that? And yeah, I did make this where you have your sprite and you're interacting with things, but you don't have to do that. You could eventually have a project where when you first start the game, it just opens up a map, and there is, or opens up something on your screen. There is no sprite, there is no character, and it just pops up with messages, and it tells you what to do, and it gives you buttons to push, and it has a puzzle for you. So this could just be a Sudoku game, and you could build from here and do all kinds of things, just like how I started to make a version of this where it's icon based, right, instead of numbers. So anyway, there's a lot you can do with this, and I did learn a lot from doing this, working through this. So anyway, I hope this is interesting to you. I hope you find this helpful. I hope you find this valuable. Again, I didn't do my earlier caveats, which I always do. I am not an expert. I don't claim to be. Some of this, there is probably a much easier way to do this. There is probably either using plugins or doing scripting or something. There is probably a much more efficient way to do this. I don't know how to do it more efficiently, and this works through simple events. So to me, I'm thrilled with that. So anyway, I will get this posted. I will work on the next part of it while this is still fresh in my memory and I don't forget how it works. And before I find any other errors in it, hopefully I don't do that. In the meantime, folks, I hope you're having a great day. I hope you're enjoying yourself. I love MZ. I love building things in here, and I love doing these tutorials. So, if you find these tutorials helpful, if you appreciate the effort that goes into them, please consider liking, subscribing, getting notifications, leaving comments. I do try to respond to all comments. And in the meantime, before the next video comes up, if you have any suggestions, by all means, communicate with me. Let me know. You can leave a comment. You can also find me on rpgmakerweb.com. The forums, my username is the exact same as it is here, Zombie Kids Rules. Zombie Kids Rule, so you can find me over there. You can always message me, whatever, if you have suggestions or questions or what have you. So have a great day, everyone. Happy gaming, happy game developing, and hopefully I'll see everybody very soon with the next part. Okay? All right. See you later. Bye.